There's a kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. You wake up in the morning, the light is there, the day is beginning, nothing is particularly wrong, and yet something feels heavy. Not in your body, in a quieter place than that. You move through the morning slowly, make your coffee, look out the window, go through the small routines you've done for years, but there's a sense that your energy isn't fully there, as if something inside you hasn't quite woken up or hasn't quite rested. You might tell yourself you just need a better night's sleep, a quieter day, less to do. But even on days when things are calm, that feeling can still be there. A low, steady tiredness that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from carrying too much. Not physical things, invisible ones. Thoughts that don't settle. Worries that repeat quietly in the background. Old conversations that still echo when the room is quiet. A constant stream of noise, news, opinions, messages that never quite gives your mind a chance to rest. You can be sitting still and still feel crowded inside. And after a while, that kind of fullness becomes exhausting. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just steady. Like a weight you've been holding for so long that you almost stop noticing it. This kind of tiredness doesn't ask for more effort. It doesn't ask you to push harder or do more. It asks for something different, something quieter. In the next part, we'll talk about the kind of weight you don't see, the thoughts, the noise, and the emotional residue that slowly build up over time without asking for permission.
Most of what tires us doesn't look like much from the outside. You can be sitting in a quiet room, nothing urgent happening, no demands being placed on you, and still feel as if something inside is full. Not full in a satisfying way, full in a crowded way. Thoughts overlapping, worries circling, fragments of conversations replaying themselves without invitation. This is the kind of weight that doesn't show itself clearly. It builds slowly, a little at a time. A concern you carry for someone you love. A piece of news that stays with you longer than you expected. An old resentment that never fully settled. A question you keep turning over without finding an answer. None of these feel heavy on their own, but together, they begin to fill the space inside your mind. You may not even notice when it starts. It feels like thinking, like caring, like staying informed. But over time, the mind rarely gets a break. Even when you're resting, something is still moving, still processing, still holding on. You can be sitting still and still feel crowded inside. And the more crowded it becomes, the harder it is to hear anything clearly. Your own thoughts get lost in the noise. Your own feelings become harder to recognize. There is no quiet place to land. This kind of tiredness doesn't come from activity. It comes from accumulation, from everything you've been holding without realizing how much there is. And eventually, the weight begins to show itself. Not loudly, but in small, quiet ways. In the next part, we'll talk about those signs, the subtle ways your spirit begins to show that it's tired, even when everything on the surface seems fine.
The signs don't arrive all at once. They appear quietly, so quietly that you might overlook them at first. You may notice that things you once enjoyed don't feel the same. A walk you used to look forward to feels a little flat. A conversation that once brought comfort now feels like something to get through. Nothing is wrong, exactly, but something feels distant. There can be a kind of emotional thinning. You're not overwhelmed, you're not falling apart. You're simply not as connected as you used to be. Moments pass, and you realize you weren't fully there for them. You were thinking about something else.
or nothing at all. Sometimes you feel easily irritated. Small things that didn't used to matter now take more energy than they should. Other times you feel the opposite, a kind of numbness, as if your reactions have softened too much, as if you're watching your own life from a step away. When the spirit is tired, even simple things feel distant. You may find yourself avoiding silence, filling the space with background noise, a television left on, a phone nearby, something to keep your mind occupied. And yet, there may also be moments when you crave the exact opposite, a quiet so deep that nothing interrupts it, a space where your thoughts can finally settle. This is one of the clearest signs. Part of you is overwhelmed by noise. Another part is quietly asking for less. You don't feel broken, just worn thin, as if too many small things have been pulling at your attention for too long. And somewhere inside, there is a need that hasn't been met. Not for more activity, but for more space. In the next part, we'll talk about why simplicity becomes necessary, not as a luxury, but as something your mind and spirit quietly begin to need.
There comes a point when adding more no longer helps. More information, more noise, more things to keep up with. Instead of making life feel fuller, it begins to feel heavier. You may notice it in small ways. Turning on the television and feeling tired before anything even starts. Picking up your phone and losing your energy after just a few minutes. Listening to conversations that leave your mind more crowded than it was before. At some point, the mind stops asking for more. It starts asking for less. Not dramatically, just quietly. A desire to turn something off, to step away for a moment, to sit in a room where nothing is demanding your attention. Clarity doesn't come from adding more. It comes from removing what's too much. This is where simplicity begins. Not as a big decision, but as a small shift. You turn down the volume of what you don't need. You give yourself a little more space between thoughts. You stop reaching for noise every time there is silence. At first, this can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. Because for a long time, constant input has filled every quiet moment. Without it, the space feels wide, almost empty. But if you stay with it, something begins to change. The mind slows down. The background noise fades. Your thoughts become easier to follow. You begin to notice things again. The light in the room. The sound of something outside. Your own breathing. Peace often begins with less. Not less life. Less clutter between you and your life. In the next part, we'll talk about letting go of what you've been holding. The worries, the thoughts, and the emotional weight that no longer needs to stay with you. Once you begin to create a little space, something becomes easier to see. How much you've been holding, not just recently, but for a long time. Worries that stayed longer than they needed to, thoughts that repeated themselves until they felt permanent. Old moments that never fully settled. You may realize that not everything you've been carrying is still necessary. Some thoughts were useful at one time. They helped you understand something, make a decision, get through a difficult moment. But long after that moment has passed, the thought can remain, circling, repeating,
as if it still has something left to solve. There may be resentments that stayed quietly in the background, not loud enough to confront, but present enough to take up space. Conversations you replayed, things you wish had gone differently, words you never said. And over time, all of this becomes part of the weight, not because you chose to carry it, because you never set it down. Letting go doesn't always mean solving everything. Sometimes it simply means deciding not to hold on. Not every thought needs to be followed. Not every feeling needs to be analyzed. Not every memory needs to be revisited again and again. You can notice a thought and let it pass. You can remember something without stepping fully back into it. You can feel something without holding it all day. You don't need to carry every thought to prove you care. Some peace comes from deciding what you will no longer hold. This doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments. You catch yourself replaying something, and instead of continuing, you pause. You let the thought end where it is. You return to the present, again and again. And slowly, the weight begins to change, not disappearing completely, but loosening, becoming lighter.
In the next part, we'll talk about what begins to return when that weight lifts. How, in the quiet that follows, you start to hear something you may not have heard in a long time. When the noise begins to fade, something else becomes possible. You start to hear yourself again. Not the busy version of your thoughts, not the constant background of worry or planning. A quieter voice. One that has been there all along, but harder to notice when everything felt crowded. At first, it may feel unfamiliar. You sit in a quiet moment. No television, no phone, no conversation filling the space. And for a second, it feels almost too still. But if you stay there, something gentle begins to appear. A sense of presence. You notice where you are, the light in the room, the sound of something outside, the feeling of your own breath. These are small things, but they carry a kind of calm that is easy to miss when life is full of noise. You begin to feel more connected to the moment in front of you, not pulled in different directions, not divided between past and future, just here. There may be a moment when you realize something has shifted. You're sitting quietly, and instead of your mind racing, there is space. Not empty in a lonely way, clear, steady, comfortable. When the noise fades, you don't lose anything important. You regain something that was always yours, your attention, your awareness, your ability to be present in your own life. You don't need more. You need less between you and your life. And in that simplicity, something soft returns. A sense of ease. A sense that you are no longer being pulled away from yourself. In the final part, we'll bring this reflection to a gentle close and talk about what it means to live a simpler, softer life from here forward. A simpler life doesn't happen all at once. It begins in small choices, turning something off, letting a thought pass, saying no to what you don't need, making a little more space where there used to be noise. At first, these changes may seem small, almost unimportant. But over time, they begin to shape your days. The pace becomes gentler. Your mind feels less crowded. Your energy returns in quiet ways. You begin to notice things again. The way light moves through the room. The sound of a familiar place. The feeling of being present in your own life.
You realize that you were never meant to carry everything. Not every worry, not every piece of information, not every old thought that never found its ending. Some things can be set down, and when you set them down, you don't lose anything essential. You gain clarity. You gain space. You gain a softer way of living. A quieter life is not a smaller life, it's a clearer one. It allows you to see what matters without distraction, to feel what is real without interference, to move through your days with less weight and more ease. If this letter met you at the right moment, you're welcome here. And if you'd like, tell me in the comments, what is one thing you could gently let go of to make your life a little quieter? Take what helps, leave the rest.